I'm going to show you how to use Bard AI, which is essentially Google's answer to ChatGPT. A couple things that are interesting about Bard is that it's hooked up to the internet and you have this handy dandy microphone, so you can just speak the prompt without having to type it necessarily, which does save your hands and definitely jamming all that stuff out at speed. So one of the things that I want to do here is I want to test its ability to reach into the internet and see what it can grab and do for us, and kind of how it can work as sort of a Google. So I'm just going to start out here, and I'm just going to ask it if it is connected to the internet. Are you connected to the internet? And if so, what sort of things can you provide in this chat from the internet? And it just sort of spins until it has the full message. So this is, yes, I am connected to the internet. I can provide you with a variety of pieces of information. And so we got some stuff there. So what I wanted to do is I'm going to say, go to a job listing site like Indeed.com or another comparable job listing site and find me the top paying jobs in cloud architecture in the Austin, Texas area. And so that heard everything I said pretty flawlessly. I think that's exactly what I said. And so it says now I'm unable to help as I'm only a language model and I don't have the ability to process or understand that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give that a bad response, say irrelevant. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, that's okay, comma, if you could, and I wanted it to give me a comma there, but it didn't actually, when I said comma, it didn't line that out, but that's all right. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to say, that's okay. Please just give me some of the top job listings that you can find on the internet. I just want to see the text so I can understand what the job listings require and what the pay range is. So I want to see if it'll respond to that. Because a lot of times with like ChatGPT and these other large language models will be like, oh, I can't do that. And then you're like, that's cool, but just if you could, can you give me that? So it says, okay, here are some of the top listings I can find on the internet. Great. What I'm going to say though is, awesome, can you specifically find me job listings for cloud technology type jobs in the Austin, Texas area? So I'm going to see what it gives me back on that. And okay, cool. So it says, here's some of the listings. It doesn't really cite where these things are from. But I'm going to say, can you tell me how recently some of these listings were posted and what types of companies or what names of companies provided these job listings? So I'm kind of interested to see if it will give up some of this information. Now, okay, cool. So it's saying, hey, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Platform, IBM, Oracle, SAP, McAfee, Palo Alto Networks, like all these different companies posted these job listings. And so then what I'm going to ask is I'm going to say, I'm going to ask it specifically to go and can you identify what the easiest and highest paying roles could potentially be Could you tell me what the easiest and highest paying jobs are out of all these jobs you found in the Austin, Texas area in this category? So I'm actually going to say, hey, can you just tell me what the easiest and highest paying one is? And sometimes this thing kind of bugs out and it leaves your text inside of the box after you've been using the microphone, but that's okay. So it says, okay, like here's the highest paying one, cloud architect, right? So I'm going to say, I'm just going to do some research. We're just going to dive into it. I'm going to say, Can you tell me more about how to become a cloud architect? And then give me a 10-step plan and a timeline for actually becoming a cloud architect. And give me a pathway to actually achieving that goal and getting this type of job. And see where it just keeps some of that. I think that's kind of buggy because like after you send it, it shouldn't have that there. Okay, so it gave some steps. That's cool. Now it says some things like, hey, get certified in cloud computing. And it says there's a lot of different cloud computing like certs available. That's cool. That's probably one of the few tangible things. It has a 7-year plan, and so that's like a really long time to kind of work into this. So I'm going to say specifically, can you give me a timeline that only takes like 1 or 2 years to achieve this goal? And we'll submit. And I think if you're a little bit slower with clicking send on your prompt, then maybe it doesn't keep that in there. Okay, so it says, hey, year 1, year 2, and then one of the questions I have is like, what does a portfolio even look like for a cloud architect? So I'd like to see, what that would even entail. So I'm going to say, what would a portfolio even look like for a cloud architect? Can you give me some examples of what type of work you would even put in a portfolio for this type of profession? I'm going to send that. Interested to see. Okay, so it says, designs, plans, security plans, optimization plans, just a bunch of stuff. I don't know much about this job, but I'm just trying to see how much I can learn. Okay, great. Can you give me some links to some resources for courses or certifications or YouTube videos that provide insight into what this job actually does, or any training that is freely available for becoming a cloud architect? So I'm going to send that. I'm going to see what it gives me. I'm actually looking for it to provide some resources, because this is one weak point of ChatGPT, is that it can't actually link to these courses. This is really cool. So it has some Udemy, Coursera, edX, certifications list, YouTube videos, and then the free training. So this is really cool. So we have that right there. Can you find me the top paying job listings all across the United States for this type of job? And then tell me what city specifically pays the most. And then can you tell me how much the pay for that job would equate to the cost of living in that city? And so this is a hard test because I'm asking it to actually kind of go do some research, assess cost of living in an area, and then sort of break that down against the pay. And so it gives me some pay, and then it says, okay, cool. So this is being vague. It's like, hey, this is a personal decision, blah, blah, blah. If you had to choose a city with the best pay and the best cost of living, which city in the United States would it be for this job? And so I wanted to give me an answer. And one cool thing I like about this is I haven't typed anything. So this is really valuable. So cool. It says it would choose Austin, Texas. It says it has a cost of living that's about 20% lower. I don't know if this is true. And it says that the average salary for a cloud architect in Austin is about 10% higher than the national average. So that's cool. And I'm going to ask it, can you give me your top 5 choices and then give me a quick justification as to why those cities have better pay and lower cost of living? Okay, let's see what that does. Okay, so it gives Austin, Denver, Raleigh, Columbus, and Madison, Wisconsin. Okay. And so as a breakdown, of why it thinks the cost of living is lower in these areas. And so I'm going to grill it about that. I'm going to say, can you tell me why the cost of lower is, oh, I said lower. I need to restate that. Can you tell me why you think the cost of living is what you're saying it is in these cities? For instance, can you provide some facts or some data that provide insight to why you think the cost of living is lower currently in those cities? So I'm really interested to see what it says about this, and what it actually said. So it said, okay, so housing is a major factor. Transportation, food. It has milk prices, which is only a 50-cent difference. I would also be surprised if San Francisco milk prices are $3. That sounds like not accurate. I know that in Virginia, where I live, that I'm pretty sure a gallon of milk is definitely not $2.50. But so if it is cheaper in Austin, that's cool. I would doubt that it's cheaper in San Francisco just because things, right? Monthly electric bills, that's also interesting. And then taxes, I think probably it says the property tax rate in San Francisco is about 1.25 versus Austin's 1.75. And I'm going to say, can you provide your sources for the cost of living data that you just provided to me? So I'm interested to see if it will do that and what its sources are, where it's coming from. So it says it has some information from these sources, and I'm going to ask if this data or information current as of 2023, because that's very important. And it says that the data is current. I do know that government sources tend to be pretty lax on their time frames. They have they pull some information, maybe like 2 years behind. And so it may or may not be super current, but it's saying it is. That's really cool. So we could say okay, let's Google it, right? And we could quickly go to Google just right off of that, and then take that piece right there, that prompt, it's a prompt. It's actually kind of crazy because Bard is sort of providing prompts for Google to drive you towards the internet, where it will then say, okay, let me go look at this website, which has all of the, cost of living indexes and all this different stuff. So, pretty interesting overall. I think this is a kind of a unique interaction with Bard. Some of the things that I think are awesome, the internet connectedness and the ability to just prompt verbally through a microphone. I think those are both really powerful for Bard. So if you watched this far, I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in another video. In this video, we're going to try to get Bard AI to create some Midjourney prompts for some Marvel comics. I'm just going to give it some ideas, ask it some questions, and then I'm going to pull up Midjourney and I'm going to see how it does with the prompts. So let's get going. So I'm going to use the microphone here, and I'm going to use its ability to tap into the internet to kind of see what it can do as far as prompts for us. So I'm going to ask it, can you provide me with 10 high quality, highly detailed prompts of Spider-Man as he would look in the same artistic style as Marvel comic books? And we'll see what that does. I was messing with this earlier and I didn't get exactly what I wanted. So what I'm looking at now, this is good. What it had done before is it had gone and had defined art styles like cubism and realism, and Baroque. And I was like, I don't want Spider-Man in a Baroque style. I just want Spider-Man in a Marvel comic book style. So it looks like we have some pretty good breakdown here. So I'm actually going to grab this prompt, and we're going to go over here and I'm going to throw it in, and it'll take just a second to kind of get that to cross over. So I'm going to take another one. Let's see. I'll say Spider-Man standing on top of a building. and we're going to see what this provides. I think it's going to be pretty good. And what I'm going to do though is I'm going to challenge it. I'm going to give it back a prompt. So we got this one, right? So Spider-Man fighting a giant monster. So I'm going to say, I'll do a little bit of hybrid. Can you take this prompt and then make the monster into 10 different possible villains in the Marvel universe? So I'm going to see what it comes up with. It should give prompts in that style. And so let's see. I want it to be in that style, but I want it to give me the prompts. Okay, great. Thank you for giving me a list of those villains. Now I want you to take that prompt that I just gave you and then make the prompt be about Spider-Man wrapping one of those villains in a web. This is wrapping, and I'll have to put a W in front of there and then send it. And so I'm going to see if it'll give me one prompt or not. Okay, so here's a prompt about Spider-Man, but this is really a story. So what I'm going to say now is I'm going to say, cool, can you turn this into a Midjourney prompt? And I do think it sort of, it dances around and it has some challenges getting to the actual meat and potatoes of what's needed. Let's say, can you make the prompt look like this? And I'm curious to see if it'll take the context of Green Goblin and then mixing that together. But it didn't. It didn't take that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I'm just going to take part of this right here. I'm going to put that right here. And then we're going to look at the prompts that we got so far. So let's see. Here's some of the visuals that we got. Overall, kind of a weird visual from Midjourney. I have done a lot with this in some of my other videos, so I know that they can get, like certain prompts can get Spider-Man to be much better. So I'm actually going to test this, because I know ChatGPT can do this. So I'm going to provide this prompt back to Bard, and I'm going to say, this prompt does not show Spider-Man in a clear visual, like with a suit that makes sense. I don't know. We'll see how that works. Can you redefine this prompt to give Midjourney clarity on what the spider suit should look like? So I'm curious to see if it'll take the prompt. I know ChatGPT could do this very easily. So, okay, so here's a Midjourney prompt. A dramatic, high-quality image of Spider-Man standing in front of a destroyed city. Great. The one thing I would say is that I'm pretty sure that Midjourney requires some prompts that are specifically that define the size. And so I'll just paste this in, but I don't think that it's going to work. So I'm going to say, I think it needs those specifics. Okay, cool. So this mixed Green Goblin and Spider-Man together, which is not, and this is some of this is on Midjourney's side. So that's important to take note of. But just kind of, I'm measuring all of this against what I know of ChatGPT and its capabilities. Okay. So let's see what else. Okay, great. Can you give me 10 more prompts, but then make the prompts more detailed in every way? I want the prompts to be highly visually detailed so that Midjourney doesn't have any confusion about how to convey a scene from a Marvel comic book involving Spider-Man. So we're going to see how that goes. And I asked for 10 prompts. So, we're asking for some refinement and let's see what we get. Okay, so let's run this. Oh, okay, cool. Let me check this out real quick. Okay, so this is our refined image. And so it's not super good, but I am going to upscale too, because this one I think has some possibility to it. And I'm going to respin the whole thing, because I think that does have something going on. Now, Spider-Man swinging through the city at night. That's a pretty easy one, I'd say. So let's do this. Let's go. Oh, it's Spider-Man rescuing a person from a burning building. That should be kind of challenging. Let's see if it got a prompt that can create that. And let's see. Spider-Man comforting a child who is scared. I think that's a pretty complex one. I just want to test the limits of Midjourney to see if it'll actually provide the scene. One thing that's hard with these prompts is actually breaking out. There's Spider-Man, and then there's a separate person, and they're interacting in this way, and this person has this expression, and this person has this expression. That's a pretty complicated one. So, the prompts usually by default they don't get it right. Like you see here, Spider-Man rescuing a person from a burning building. We just have this warped and tangled Spider-Man. We don't have him carrying a person or anything like that. So that prompt by default not too good. These are all right. And then this is interesting right here. So it's a high quality image of Spider-Man smiling as he holds up a sign that says something on it. All right. Words are definitely a problem for Midjourney. So we'll see how it works out with that. The one of Spider-Man comforting a child who is scared. So this is a little bit better, but it's kind of funky with the faces and the hands and the posture. So some of these are okay. And I'm going to respin that just to see if we get any other better variations, but that definitely did not work. This, wild looking, I don't even know what's going on in half of these. It looks like some Russian. And then this smile is just terrifying. And the half face Spider-Man mask is just, it's not it. So anyhow, some of the prompts coming out of Bard, I think I've seen better from Midjourney, but obviously you want to take these prompts and then you want to make them a little bit better. But overall, it's just important to know that this is, I think, about the level that Bard's at with these things. So one of the things I'm going to do to challenge it is I'm going to ask it about some of the advanced features in Midjourney's documentation that could help us out with providing some better prompt. Can you take these 10 prompts that you just gave me and then implement some of Midjourney's advanced features for aspect ratio and quality to make these prompts more interesting visually? So we're going to send that and we'll see if it comes back. I know roughly what I'm looking for. And what I want it to do is to go in and grab, the aspect ratio and the quality, and then do something with that. So it gave us this, but it didn't give us this in prompt form. So I'm going to say, and that's a flaw that I would say. Cool, can you take all of this information you just gave me and then turn it into a textual string that I can copy and paste into Midjourney that provides the aspect ratio, the quality, and all that stuff. Okay. And let's see if it does. and it really didn't. I'm looking for the actual syntax of how Midjourney would want you to represent the aspect ratio and the quality. Because I'm almost certain that it would be like AR11. Yep, kind of like this. And so I'm going to say, yes, exactly. Now can you give me those prompts in the style of what Midjourney would want with that exact syntax that you just gave me from the code snippet, but then apply it to all of those Spider-Man prompts you just gave me. And so I'm having to clarify a lot with it. So one thing to think about with Bard is that, you know, it's doing a lot. So this is okay. Let's see about this. Let me go ahead and copy and paste this in. So I'm going to imagine. I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to throw a couple more things. And we'll see how all these come out. Let's see. Another one about Spider-Man fighting a giant monster. And I think the aspect ratio and the quality, I think, are probably going to work because they do match what is being asked over here. So that's great. And I'm going to see that comes out. And yeah, so this is pretty cool. These are a lot better. The aspect ratio is definitely really cool. I'm actually going to upscale a couple of these and just sort of see what we can do. This prompt right here, it actually does look like it has Spider-Man actually fighting something. And so I don't know why the aspect ratio or the quality would have added to that, but it looks like it did. And I think we're going to get some weird situations here. Looks like we're going to get the same scenario we did with the sign holding up, but that's okay. Spider-Man here, definitely a weird situation here. Too much going on with the teeth, turning him into Hulk and all that. Over here, kind of a weird thing. You got like a giant Spider-Man. I don't know about that. And then with this one, too much teeth. The masks are weird. And we got whatever Italian, Russian situation that we got over here with the words. So definitely words are not coming through. That's fine, though. That's like part of Midjourney. That's not something I think we would blame on Bard. But overall, these prompts are a little bit more interesting, and it took me a little bit to actually get the prompts to come out right in Bard the way that I wanted them, but they did come out eventually, and then they did give me some prompts, right? So I could say, I think now I could say, hey, can you give me 10 prompts just like this one, but they are all for Captain America. And so we'll see if that spins, and we'll see if it keeps the same kind of format, and it does. And so I'm actually going to take this, I'm going to run some of these through, and we'll see how that works out. And this rescuing a person thing with Captain America, that's going to be interesting. Let's go ahead and see what's up with that. Run all these through. Okay, we hit the maximum number of jobs. Awesome. Exactly what we want to do. Let's go ahead and grab another prompt here while we're waiting for this to spin up. So let's see. Captain America fighting a giant monster. Cool. And then this one right here. They're almost identical visual scene depictions. Okay, I think this one is pretty cool. Hands are all jacked up. What we could start doing is trying to get some implementation of negative prompts, and I think that would just be something we'd have to ask if we can implement in there. And that kind of gets into advanced prompting a bit. We got some pretty good ones of Captain America. I think wrinkled shirt over here. I think this one over here is pretty good. I'm going to grab that. The Spider-Man one, pretty cool, but this weird cape going on. Hands are jacked up. Some things don't really change in Midjourney. Everything else is very cool, though. So if you were actually to come in and crop this, it could be a little bit better. Let's see. Okay, cool. We got Captain America, and we have like references to multiple people, but we don't have... we only got a soldier carrying out like a person that looks kind of like Voldemort in the first Harry Potter movie. I don't know what's going on with that. Some of these are pretty good. And these ones actually have a Captain America type figure actually fighting something that is a monster. So they're blending the visuals together in a way that I don't think is really what we wanted, but it's headed in that direction. So overall, I would say that Bard, it takes a lot of push to get it to what you want. I think you have to be really explicit. And then even when you're really explicit, it does kind of push off what you said, and it'll just give you some kind of broad like ideas. But with that being said, not bad. And overall, I think this is pretty good. In this video, we're going to see if Bard AI from Google can write us a cover letter for this job that I just randomly pulled off of Indeed. So I'm going to give it some instructions, and I'm going to then give it the job description, and we're going to see what it comes out with. We kind of know what ChatGPT can do with this, so I'm interested to see what Bard can do for us and if it will do this for us. So we're going to test this out real quick. What I'm going to tell this to do, I'm going to say, write me a cover letter for this job description that I want to apply for. And I'm going to keep it real simple. I'm just going to pass that in and just see what it outputs right off the bat, and see what this does. So it's giving me this. I'm going to review it real quick. Cool. So this letter isn't super personable. It also just kind of made up all the information about, like I have been working as a cloud architect for the past 5 years. I had these previous roles or whatever. And what I want to do is I want to act like I have, some background, and I want to provide that information to Bard and then have it rewrite the cover letter to reflect that just by me telling it to Bard. And so I want to see if it'll do that. And so my prompt would be like, hey, I want you to redesign this cover letter and include my technical consultant role with Microsoft for 2 years and my film editing degree from Full Sail University, and I want you to include my cloud architecture certificate from AWS in the context of this letter. And I want you to rewrite it to sound more personable and not so stiff. So we'll see what it does with that. I wanted to add the context of, this information that I provided it. Let's see. Okay. So, it kept the first bit the same, which I kind of see as a kind of a not where we wanted it to go. It did include that the degree and the stuff I said about AWS, Azure, and said Google Cloud Platform. Now I want to just like revise it and give it some information and say like, hey, I know this, but not that. And I think I'm not super into the structure of this. So what I'm going to say from here is I'm going to say, hey, can you just include that my last 5 years actually included 2 years at Microsoft and 4 years at Full Sail before that. So I'm going to see if it rewrites it to look like that, and then I'm going to ask it to rewrite it all with everything. Okay, so this is where I think I'm definitely seeing a little bit of failure. I think it's complicated right here. Is that it says, it still retains that I've been working in the cloud computing industry for the past 5 years, even when that's not up to the information that I provided, right? So it did include the role at Microsoft, and that, and what's interesting here, it says that I worked as a cloud architect at Full Sail University for 4 years. The thing is, for that is, I think, what did I say up here? I should have said, or I did say, that I just got a film editing degree from Full Sail University. So this extrapolated that I somehow was working at Full Sail University, right? So that this is interesting that the language model is pushing this out. So what I'm going to tell it, I'm going to just describe to it that it's wrong and tell it why it's wrong. And I'm just going to kind of look over this as I describe it, and then this is going to be a kind of a helpful technique, I think, for most folks, just to read this and say what's wrong into the microphone. So I have not been working in the cloud computing industry for the past 5 years. My time at Full Sail was only educational for my bachelor's degree. I do not know Google Cloud Platform. I only know AWS and Azure. So can you change those details inside of the cover letter? And then can you rewrite the whole structure of this cover letter to make sense? And then can you say that the hiring manager's name is Joe and that my name is Bill, and add those details to the cover letter as well? So I really just expressed everything that I thought was wrong with the cover letter, and I'm going to see what the deal is. So it says, okay, here's a version of your cover letter that has been updated to reflect your actual experience. So it says, I've been working in cloud computing for past 3 years. Interesting. That's almost right. 2 years at Microsoft. Great. And then it still says, I worked as a cloud architect intern at Full Sail University for 1 year, which is interesting detail that I didn't tell it, and it just sort of decided that I had done this even though I didn't do that. So I'm actually going to have to beat this detail out of Bard because it really, really, really wants to say that I did this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste this, and I'm going to say, I did not do this, and just see what it does. So hopefully it understands, okay, let's get rid of that. But what's funny is that it comes back and it actually just like gives you that again. So I'm going to say, remove this from the cover letter. And it's very explicit. Hey, to take this out of what you just gave me. So let's see what the deal is. Okay. Yep, so it took that out. But what it did not do is add any information about my education. So obviously I could put that in the resume, etc., and then that information could be reflected there. I do think that we had to fight to get to this level of detail with Bard. So overall, I'm actually kind of surprised that with the detail that I provided and the prompts and how explicit I was, that it didn't work out as well as I thought it would. It just added a bunch of details. It didn't ask any questions, and so I think that is where it definitely fell short of some of ChatGPT's performance I've seen on this. So I will hold that against Bard in this regard. With that being said, I hope this was helpful for you to learn how to work with Bard. I do think that the ability to use a microphone prompt is so valuable because it saves you so much time to where you don't have to type out so many things, and you can just like copy and paste real quick and then just verbalize, and that works pretty fast. So overall, I hope this is helpful to those of you who are trying to use Bard for different tasks. This kind of concept could apply to other research that you're doing or other types of things you're trying to get Bard to write. And, I hope this is helpful. If you hung out with me for this long, thanks a bunch, and I'll see you in another video. So in this video, we're going to see how well Bard AI can do for something like trip planning. I'm going to ask it to plan a trip for me. And I'm going to start building the prompt out here because I do have the microphone access here. So I'm going to say, plan me a trip for 2 people for 1 week in July to Miami, Florida. I want to stay at an Airbnb on the beach. I don't want to spend over $2,000, and I want to eat at several of the top rated restaurants in the Miami area. Let me know what your idea for a plan is and what sites I should go to find out about what restaurants to eat at, and give me some suggestions of how the trip should go. Give me a 5-day plan of how this trip could work. All right, so I'm going to send that, and we're going to see what this puts out. So I'm actually interested to see what this does, because one of the things with Bard is it touts being tapped into the internet, and says, hey, I can go research things for you. So that's a really interesting thing with ChatGPT, where it's a little bit different. So okay, so it says here's a possible itinerary for a 5-day trip. So day 1. So it's a little bit vague here, but it says, hey, you could go and check out these restaurants right here. It has some names. I'm actually going to go check real fast if this one is even a thing. And turns out it is. It looks like right here on Google you could go to this, so it's still listed. All right, so moving through here, it has some suggestions for some things that you could go check out and try. Suggest snorkeling on day 3. It's calling out the names of some places. It's given a dinner suggestion for every day of your trip. That's really cool. And then it says here are some websites that you can use to find out about restaurants in Miami. And it breaks all those down. And then it says, hey, here's some suggestions for keeping everything under cost. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask it to find out some pricing for me. So I'm going to ask for basically an enhancement on this part of the prompt. Even though I'm pretty satisfied with this is cool. I'm going to ask for a little bit more of a breakdown. Can you give me a breakdown on what the average price for a hotel in Miami is right now? And can you list 5 of the top hotels that aren't too expensive, and give me the prices and links to all of their websites? So I'm curious if it'll do this. It does seem kind of stingy to cite sources, and in other times it will give sources. So this is one weird thing with Bard, because it claims to be able to go on the internet and do these things and find these things for you and essentially act as like a AI, LLM, Google type thing. But sometimes it really bucks on these types of requests. So I'm interested to see what it can do if I test it a little bit more. That's fine. I just want to know what the hotels are and what the prices might be. I do understand that you are only a language model. Sometimes with these things you can just tell it that it's fine to do whatever you want, and sometimes that works. And that's essentially what we got. The one thing I will say, this kind of dumb that Bard did, is it just said, cool, here are some of the cheapest hotels in New York City, and it just randomly grabbed a location, and it did not do Miami. It didn't keep the context of Miami. That's cool. Can you give me the same type of information but for Miami for this trip that you just helped me plan? And I'm curious if it'll say no or if it'll say yes. It'd be interesting. But yeah, okay, cool. So we have some breakdown here. Here's some of the cheapest hotels in Miami. Okay, great. So we have a list right here. That's cool. These hotels are all located in Miami-Dade County, close to many of the city's top attractions. Neat. All right. I'm going to ask it to give me some of the reviews of some of these places. Can you tell me, out of the list of hotels that you just gave me, which one is the top rated, and then tell me what some of the reviews say about that top rated location? So I'm interested to see how far it can go to actually talk about this. So, okay, so it says top rated hotel in Miami is a James Hotel, and that was in our list at $70. It's near the Miami Beach Convention Center, has a 4.5 out of 5 stars on Google. Here are some of the reviews. Okay, great location, great staff, and clean rooms. Awesome, great. And I'm going to give it a little bit more of a complex task. I'm going to say to it, great, can you now tell me how many 4-star restaurants are within walking distance or less than 2 miles from the James Hotel in Miami? So I'm curious to see if it'll do basically a spatial task and then go and assess this. And sure enough, it did that. So it says, okay, yep, there are 10 4-star restaurants within walking distance or less of the James Hotel in Miami. So that's pretty cool. I'm actually going to go fact check this real quick on Google to see how this lines up. So it's cool. It actually has this listed as actually closer, and I'm not sure how I measured it, but closer. James Hotel to the Bazaar by Jose Andres is really close. If you look back over here at Bard, it'll say that it was 0.6 miles. So it's, I'm not sure where it's pulling that information, but it's pretty darn close. So this is really cool. So it says, hey, you know, here's all this information. So the other thing I want to say is like, okay, great. Tell me now what some of the best dishes are at these restaurants. So we're going to build the prompt real fast. I'm going to say, okay, great. Can you give me the top 3 dishes from all of the restaurants that you just listed? And I expect this to be a pretty complex task because it would have to go kind of Google search each of these, understand the, wow, that was really quick. So it says, yeah, here's the top 3 dishes from each of the restaurants that were listed. So I don't know how it came to this. And I'm going to ask it, how did you determine what the best dishes were? So it lists here, it says that the overall rating of the restaurant, the number of positive reviews for each dish, and the average price of each dish and the type of cuisine. And then it says my own personal preferences, which I guess Bard has personal preferences for food. That's pretty creepy, but I'm into it. So anyhow, I hope that this is helpful. This is basically how you can get after some trip planning and some online research about anything. I really like the microphone feature. I probably said that a couple times over the course of these videos I've been doing on Bard. But overall, I think this is pretty competent with stuff on the internet. I do think that you have to dodge this statement right here, that it can't help with that, because it clearly can. I think it doesn't really it doesn't really know what you're asking or something like that. And I don't know what's going on with that, but hopefully that gets better as Bard gets better. And so, yeah, but if this was helpful to you, hit that like button and subscribe for more content about AI and stuff like this. If you have any thoughts, leave them in the comments, and thank you so much for watching. In this video, we're going to test out Bard's ability to write us some pretty simple Python code. I'm going to ask it to do a couple things, and then we're going to open it up in Google Colab and see if it gets the job done. So in my prompt, I'm going to describe the use case that I want the Python to fulfill, and then we'll see how it goes. So I'm going to ask Bard, write me a Python script in a notebook that I can use in Google Colab that does an API request to a weather API, one of the open ones, and then brings in the data for the entire week's forecast and provides all of the information in a table in Python Pandas that provides me with the temperature, humidity, chance of rain, and the air quality for the day. And so I'm interested to see if it's gonna do that. And what we're gonna do is see what the deal here is. Okay, cool. So this says, hey, here's a Python script in a notebook that you can use in Google Colab. So, okay, so this is pushing to api.openWeatherMap. Okay, cool. And then it's going to grab the information. It's going to turn that into a data frame. It's going to print the data frame, or else it's going to say API request failed. So I'm actually going to take this code, and one cool thing you can do right here is you can say a copy code, or you can say export to Colab. So I'm going to do that real quick. And then I'm going to open Colab, and then my code's just right there. Now, what I am going to have to do is I'm going to have to see about getting an API key to this site, but this should be pretty easy. So I'm going to go on that journey real quick and come right back. Okay, so I went and got my API key, and then I pasted that inside of the area where it asked. It was really easy to get it. This is like a free API thing. So I just put it in where it said your API key right there, and copied and pasted that in, ran this code. It's now asking for what city I would like the weather for. So I'm going to say Atlanta, and then I'm going to hit enter. And then let's see what we have. So at the end, let's see. So it says, what city would you like to get? Different key error, air quality. So I'm going to actually just see what happens if I comment that out and then try to run it again. Just see if that changes it. And it did. So what I think is probably going on is that the field for air quality index or air quality just wasn't called AQI anymore. That's maybe going off of some old information, but that was the only flaw, and all I had to do was comment out one line, the whole script worked. And if I wanted to get it to work, ultimately it could, I could just change that real quick and we'd be good to go. So that's awesome. That's pretty good right off the bat. So I'm going to ask it a couple of different questions. I'm going to say like, hey, what other open APIs like this could you provide me with some scripts for? Just looking for some ideas. So what other open and free APIs could you provide me with some Python scripts for? Can you just give me a list of some of the APIs that you know of that you could provide some examples for? So we'll see what it gives. And then based off of what it gives me, I'm going to take one of them and think up a use case for it real fast and see what it will give me. So, okay. So open weather map, Google Maps, YouTube data API, Facebook Graph API, Instagram, Pinterest, Reddit API, Stack Overflow API. So I'm going to ask it, are these actually free and open APIs that you have access to, or are they ones that you need an account for? Can you tell me some more information about some other APIs that maybe aren't social media related? And because I know that we're going to have to jump through a couple of additional hoops for that. And I am kind of judging its ability to grab that. So that's not super good. So book search, movie search, news API. Okay, news API. So I'll be like, hey, can you give me news API? And can you say like, hey, can you give me news about happenings in Berlin? So I'm going to say, can you write me a script that uses this news API to perform some research on important happenings in Berlin, Germany? And can you have the Python script hit that API, make a request, and then gather some data, and then provide a table of the most important economic and banking news for today? So I kind of want to see what that does. I'm really curious because I gave it the context of what I want the query to be. Economic and banking news for today. And I'm curious what that does. So it's going to say, okay, here's the code, here's the API. It's going to require a key, but we can do that real quick, no problem. It's going to get this, and then it's going to say, hey, give me articles, and then say, only give me data for a string that contains business as a string. So that might work. And then it says, we're going to get the most important news by a sort of when it's been published. So it's going to give me like the most recent news. So let's go ahead and then open this. It even gives me an example of the like when this information was published at, and it has dates that are from the 24th and the 26th. So it actually looks like it's from news from yesterday, moving back through the week. So that's pretty cool. So it actually has an output of what it thinks the script will look like. That's pretty cool. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can export to Colab. We're going to open that up. I'm going to close the other one out. Now I have this right here. I'm going to go to newsapi.org and I'm going to see if I can get into that. Okay, so once again, I'm just going to paste my API key here. I signed up real quick for free. They gave me an API key instantly. And then for them, we're going to go ahead and run this. Okay, so I just ran it and I got an error. And so let's see. This is key error source. Let's see. Interesting. If string contains business. So that's interesting. I'm just going to go ahead and say, let me take that out. Actually, let me go back on that. And I'm going to put a hashtag here. Go ahead and run that again. So it looks like what it's doing is it's kind of taking some of the information and it's making up kind of what it thinks a schema is. And so what I could do is I could feed this information back to Bard and say, hey, I got these errors. And so let me actually go back here, get that, run this again. And then I'm just going to go through here. And then I'm just going to tell Bard that I had got an error on this. So we'll see what it says to debug the code. I think that would be interesting to see. And ideally, this should be able to look through all sorts of Google stuff, right? And when it does, it goes through and it's giving me a new set of code. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy up to this point and copy and paste that into my script and see if that works. So ultimately that did not work, even though I tried to work through this and comment some of this stuff out. So I'm going to count that code there as faulty, but I'm going to tell it ultimately like that none of that worked. So it's going to need to try a completely different method and change that around. So I'm going to give that feedback back to Bard. And I'm going to say, hey, none of this code that you gave me worked. I got a ton of errors. Can you please give me an entirely new version that fixes any and all issues that might occur? And so we'll see what he gives for that. And it's not uncommon that with these language models that you might have them generating multiple pieces of code for you. Now we could probably find the error if we want, but I'm ultimately just testing to see how accurate the model is at providing a legitimate piece of code that actually works. So that one did not work either. And not to spin wheels on this, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to see how many tries it takes for me to get this, because I think we're on our third. So what I found out after a little bit of research and digging through this and trying to provide the documentation for this API to Bard is that ultimately it was just conducting the request parameters in this string right here in completely the wrong way. So it just wasn't hitting the API in the correct manner. So with that being said, obviously I'm gonna go ahead at this point in time and write this off. But as you saw before, you can try to thrash with this. You can see what's up. You can ask it to explain its code and try to work through it. If you know a little bit about code, you could work this out simply. Some of what I'm experimenting with is trying to find like the perfect output of a large language model for some code. And on a simple task like this, I would ultimately expect this to be probably 100% accurate with a very short, simple task like this. But it is what it is. And if you hung out with me this long, thanks for watching. Hope this was helpful and have a good one. In this video, we're going to test Bard AI's ability to deal with some prompts that involve data analysis and personal planning. So the first prompt I'm going to use is asking it to analyze the average income levels in the United States over the past 20 years and to identify any factors contributing to any significant changes. So I'm interested to see what sort of responses and sources it gives, and then I'm interested to see where that goes. Cool. So it says that it's been increasing steadily over the past 20 years. Median incomes in 2000 versus 2021, so 21 years. And so this represents an increase of 34.0 over 20 years. And the first thing I want to see is, I'm going to push this in there and I'm going to wait for that. I'm going to say, how does this keep up with inflation? And then let's see, we're going to go through here. It says there's a college educated workforce. There's a increase in the tech industry. And let's see. It says the top 1% of earners take home a much larger share of the income than the bottom 90% of earners, which is interesting because it left out 8%. So I think there's a little bit of a math gap there. Wonder what the other 9% are doing, unless I'm reading that incorrectly. And then it says here's some of the factors that contribute to income inequality: education, occupation, gender, race, geography. And some interesting assessments there, but I want to see the discussion of inflation, and if that 34.1% over 20 years, if that increased. So it says the income has increased, but has not kept up with inflation. So apparently CPI increased by 78.5%. Which means the purchasing power of the median household income has declined by 24.4. So interesting breakdown there. So let's move on to another prompt here real quick. So we're going to ask for a financial plan for a couple in their 30s who want to do a couple of different things. Purchase a home, save for retirement, send their child to college. So it has some pretty kind of generic stuff off the bat, some sort of basic breakdown here. I want to say if the couple has a combined income of $135,000 per year and they have investments of $5,000 in a Roth IRA and $2,000 in stocks and a $350,000 mortgage, can you provide a table of what this plan could look like for saving and investing across their total income? So this is just me just providing a bunch of complex angles to prompt Bard to think about more things. So let's see here. So, okay. So this sort of breaks down what they could be doing. Let's see here. I'm not really sure what this is saying, because saying, okay, they have a combined income of 135, and if you added all these together, it would not equal 135. So I'm not really sure what this means particularly. And so I'm just going to say, I didn't really understand the table that you provided in the last output. Can you please revise that table so that it makes more sense? We'll see what it gives me then. And it looks like it gave almost exactly the breakdown of everything that it gave before. So I'm not really sure where this is going. Maybe I'm just missing it, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense. I'm going to ask for a table that provides a year over year how much money they should put away for each topic. Can you provide a table that shows year over year for the next 10 years what they should put away in what category? And I said put away meaning save or contribute. So we'll see if it takes that bit of English and where it goes. Okay, so it's saying that basically this should be the contribution every year for like across the board, right? So it says expenses should be down to this, Savings should be this, and I don't know what's included in that. If retirement, and when it says down payment, that's kind of confusing too. So I don't really think that it really hit on this, because if we have just a down payment every year of $20,000, doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like, what is that down payment for? So they don't really add any context to this. So I think we're just going to move on there. I think I'm going to write this off as a loss for Bard AI. I don't think that it really figured this one out specifically. So the next prompt deals with I'm going to change that. Deals with the home buying process, and it asks for like a step-by-step guide for first-time home buyers. And so it's going to give some pretty generic stuff from Google. But what I want to do is I'm going to give it a very specific address. I'm going to give it just someone's address that I'm going to pull off of Zillow for a house that's listed. And I'm going to ask it to give me some information on the neighborhood that this house is in. So I'm just going to take this house right here, and I'm going to paste this in, and I'm going to say, can you tell me about the surrounding area and history of this property. I'm curious to see if it'll do that, because if I was somebody who was trying to figure out first-time home buying and I was looking for a house, I probably have a specific property I'm looking at. So this is pretty cool. It has a breakdown on this specific property. It's talking about the property, details about the surrounding area. Cool. I'm going to say, can you provide me with the tax history or any sales history of this property that you can find? I'm curious to see if it knows that. And yes, it does. So it has it has a tax history, and then it has the sale history. And I'm actually going to go see if that's the case. So October 9th and April 24th, I'm going to go see. And so here it just says that it was sold in 2008. But the taxes do look rough. They're not really that accurate according to this data here. And let's see. Yeah, it doesn't look like there was a sale in 2023 or 2015 according to this data. So that is interesting that it says that there is. I think that's really interesting that it gave this data. And I'm going to tell it, hey, I don't think that this information is correct, but can you tell me what source you got it from so that I can understand why the information that I'm looking at in Zillow is not correct or not matching your information. We'll see what it says. Because Zillow could be incorrect. So it says that it's using the county's information. Can you give me the sources directly so that I can go look at them myself for this information? So I'm curious if it'll actually reach back and say, yeah, and so it actually has that. And I found that with Bard, if you ask for the source, but you don't ask for links, then it will give you links. So you have to call links sources. I just say, hey, I want to see your sources. Can you give me your sources? And then it'll give you direct links. So I think that it might have gone in there and gotten this information. What's interesting is that April 24th, 2023, that's very recent. And I think depending on, for me, that's only like 7 days ago. It's possible that this could be already under contract and they may have just been listing this as like still for sale on Zillow, and they could have the taxes screwed up. So that anything is possible, I guess. Since it's not that far off, it said 1,181, and so I don't know. Hard to say to me, but I guess it just depends on where the sources from this data or where Zillow got their stuff. But overall, pretty cool that it can even say that it could bring you this type of data. Okay, the next prompt focuses on designing an investment portfolio for a risk-averse investor with a 10-year investment horizon, focusing on asset allocation, diversification, and long-term growth. So it's breaking this down. It's saying, hey, do 60% stocks, 30% bonds, and 10% cash. And some of the things it's talking about is large cap stocks, index funds, ETFs, real estate, and bonds. So I think it's sort of these maybe by most risky to least risky, because I think bonds are the least risky thing, if I'm remembering that correct. And it's saying, it's giving some tips like, start small. And I'm going to ask what you think about cryptocurrencies. And so I'm curious to see if it will take that information I gave it in the previous prompt and then configure itself to understand what it thinks about cryptocurrency. So I'm going to say, do you think for this type of investor that I described to you that cryptocurrencies could or should be part of their investment strategy? So we'll see. It says, if you're risk averse, you should not buy cryptocurrency, which is pretty straightforward, but it's just cool to see that it does compute for that. It remembers what I told it, and that's really good. So I think this is I'm going to give that a good response. Okay, so in this next one, we're going to have it develop a comprehensive retirement planning strategy for a 50-year-old individual that brings in aspects such as Social Security, investment options, and potential lifestyle changes. So, comprehensive retirement planning strategy, and it's saying some pretty generic stuff off the bat, and it's saying, just providing some general information, saying get professional help. Pretty balanced answer overall, nothing crazy here, and one thing I'm going to do to spice this up is I'm just going to say, can you provide some information on retirement communities in South Florida and tell me what sort of ballpark monthly spend I might have to use to retire there? And then can you tell me what sort of tax implications I would have in the state of Florida and what sort of investment considerations I might be making with a move to the state. I currently live in California. Cool. So we'll just see if it takes that and runs with it. So we're asking it to figure out, to do some research on the fly and then add that up. So, okay, cool. So it's saying, hey, here's some considerations for Miami. Saying there's multiple retirement communities, no state income tax, sales tax, property tax, investment considerations, and then it's kind of giving a balanced answer right here at the end. If my goal is to retire at the age of 55 and I don't want to run out of money until I'm 95, how much money do I need today to spend all of those years in South Florida? So I'm interested to see how it computes that. Okay, so it's saying, hey, I can't really tell you that. Pretty broad, which is good that it didn't just give some sort of BS general answer and just throw numbers at you. So overall, I think this is a pretty just kind of interesting example of how Bard can deal with prompts and its online research capabilities and its accuracy at the moment right now at the end of April in 2023. So overall, I hope this was helpful, and if it was, hit that like button, and I'll see you in another video. Thanks.
In this video, I'm going to show you how Bard AI reacts to several prompts about quality of life, trip planning, and different places around the world, and use some of these prompts to just get some insights about what Bard thinks or what it can do for you when you ask it certain questions. So the first prompt I'm going to give it is going to be about comparing quality of life in New York City, San Francisco, and Austin, Texas, taking into account factors like job opportunities, climate, and recreational activities. So we're going to see what this gives us. I'm actually kind of interested to see where it takes it and what sort of information it gives. Okay, so let's see what it says. So it gives this main breakdown and then kind of moves by category. And then let's see, then it gives a table, and that's pretty cool. So it shows like a factor, and then it has like a rating scale of like job opportunities, climate, recreational activities, and cost of living. So like right here in Austin, it says growing, and the other ones it just says many. So this is really cool. I like when it can give a table of information. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask it to actually give a table of information. We're going to say like, hey, can you expand on what the average, I'll just kind of spell out the prompt right here. Can you give me a table of data for all three of these cities that represents what the average 1-bed, 1-bath apartment would cost in the downtown area of all three of these cities? So we're gonna see if it'll go do some research and then pull some information. And right here it did exactly what I asked, right? So it said, yep, New York City, San Francisco, and Austin. So we're looking at 34, 3, and 1,700. So Austin coming in as the cheapest. And so pretty cool. Yeah, definitely think it's interesting. So another prompt I'm going to give it is I'm going to say, hey, can you go ahead and create I'll just reset the chat. I'll say, hey, can you create a detailed itinerary for a 2-week trip to Japan, including popular tourist attractions, local experiences, and recommended accommodations? So just wanted to kind of do some online research and then provide back some of this itinerary here. And this is pretty broad, but very cool. It gives a breakdown to all of these places. What I would say though is I'm going to see if it will give links to all of the Google Place. Since this is a Google product, I'm going to ask it to cite itself. I'm going to say, hey, I want links to every single one of these locations you just mentioned. Can you go back through this itinerary and give me links to every single place that you mentioned or every single activity that you mentioned in Google? So I just want to see the Google page so that I can see the Google reviews. Please give me all of those links built into your itinerary. I really love that microphone feature. That's a really strong feature that I think Google gave. And the speech to text, it works pretty flawless almost every time. So it says it gave me a blocker, and I said, that's fine. I understand that you are a language model, but because you can do online research, can you provide links to all of the locations that you mentioned in your itinerary with Google sources or whatever sources you want? So we'll see if it goes by. Sometimes it'll at first say that it can't do something that it can totally do. It says it's not programmed to assist to that. Okay, well, can you give me a link or some way of searching for each of these unique places that you mentioned, because I don't know where on the internet they are. And so that's, I think, the only time I've gotten a second rejection. And see right there, boom, it gives links. But what's funny about this is that sometimes it says, hey, here are some of the links to the places I mentioned, but all it did was mention places in Japan. So I'm just going to make sure it understands. I'm going to say, hey, just to clarify, you gave me a ton of locations for a 2-week trip to Japan, and none of these locations are mentioned here in this list you just gave me. I want links to the locations that you mentioned in the 2-week Japan trip itinerary. And you know, I'm telling you what, this is 1 week area of Bard, right? Pretty weak that it can't remember, 2 or 3 messages back. So I am thinking of doing some videos where we do chat GPT versus Bard AI on different things. I think that would be a pretty interesting one. But okay, let's see if we can get it to unmess itself. So I'm going to put this prompt back in. Let's say, please provide links to all places, experiences, or accommodations so I can research them. All right. And let's see how this works. Okay, so it goes through, it gives the itinerary, but it does not provide that. Hey, I would like links to all of the locations that you mentioned in this 2-day itinerary. So I'm curious to see if it'll still shove me off, if that's an update, or what the deal is. Okay, so I got Wikipedia links. Can you give me links to these locations in Google? And when I say that, I mean like the actual Google Place link, where you can go and like leave reviews, and then it has like the quick directions and everything like that. So it says it can't help with that. So with this in mind, this is one of the things that I think that Bard fails on pretty hard. So let's move on. So we're going to move on to cost of living, and so we're gonna leave another cost of living prompt, but we're going to ask it to bring in more information outside of what we talked about in the previous prompt, which was just rent between San Francisco, New York, and Austin. And so this one we're going to go international. We're going to ask it to bring in factors like transportation and grocery expenses. So I'm interested to see what the deal is with that. Okay, so it's breaking down some of the details here. Transportation, groceries. It says that groceries are higher in Paris than Berlin, and 10% more expensive. Okay, cool. And so it takes cost of living in Berlin versus Paris, and it compares them. And so, okay, great. So I think this is pretty much what I expected to see. I don't think that it brought in housing no, it did. Yeah, up here it went over housing. Okay, cool. Well, I think that one is a pretty straightforward one. I do want to ask it an opinionated question. I want to say, if you had to choose, which city would you live in? If it tells me it's a large language model and that it can't choose, I'm going to scream. Okay, so it says it would choose Berlin over Paris. Interesting. Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and see what this next prompt here is going to say, hey, determine the distance and travel time from Barcelona to popular nearby destinations like Madrid, Valencia, and Costa Brava. All right. Cool. So it says, hey, here's from Barcelona to these locations, right? And it says that these are just estimates for travel time, but that's pretty cool. So this could help with some more like trip planning type stuff. Very neat. So I really don't think there's too much to go back over on here, but I'm going to actually pivot and I'm going to have it answer a prompt about family-friendly neighborhoods. I'm going to ask it to go into a city and then determine which neighborhoods are the best for safety, access, education, and recreational facilities in London. So I'm interested to see how it decides this, and I'm going to ask it to provide some of its sources on why it thinks that way. Okay, so here it is. Just here are the top 5. And I don't know anything about London, but it lists these. It doesn't really say why, but I'm gonna ask it. Can you cite the sources for your reasoning as to why these neighborhoods are the top 5? So I'm interested to see. It says that it's not able to help with that. Can you tell me, though, how you came to this conclusion that all of these neighborhoods are family friendly? I'm really looking for it to say, I went here and I figured this stuff out. Can you tell me how you determined that crime rates were relatively low in these neighborhoods? I'm really interested to see if it's going to say that it went and did online research and that there was some sort of statistics or something like that. Okay, great. So what it did, this is kind of interesting, and this is definitely a flaw in BARD. So I think we're definitely seeing the limitation here. So it says that it determined that crime rates were relatively low in these neighborhoods by looking at the FBI data for the UK. So the FBI does not take crime data from the UK. It's a US federal agency. So what it did is it took Richmond in the UK, I think it's up here, and it knew that Richmond was the Richmond in London, but then it took that and just decided that we were talking about San Francisco. And so I'm going to tell it that this is incorrect. One thing that's really interesting, it says, in addition to the UCR data, I also talked to people who live in these neighborhoods and asked them about their experiences with crime. That is wildly off base. So very interesting to see. So we were talking about London, United Kingdom, and you suddenly decided that we were talking about the United States. Can you tell me how you got mixed up? I'm really interested to see if it will observe itself. And it says, I apologize for the confusion. I'm still under development, etc. Cool. All right. Interesting. Well, I'm going to reset the chat. I think we're going to move on. So let's do this. I'm going to say, hey, research the best retirement destinations in Europe, considering factors such as healthcare, climate, and cost of living. So this is interesting because it has to go through the lens of talking about, older people or people who are retiring. And okay, cool. So let's see. It says Portugal, Spain, Italy, Greece, Malta. And then it has some sort of prompt of like, hey, well, what do you like? How much do you have, right? So these are interesting. We could actually provide back, like what our parameters are, because this is kind of just giving a broad stroke one. It's saying that Portugal is a popular choice because of its warm climate, affordable cost of living, and excellent healthcare system. Interesting. All right, cool. Let's do this. I think there's not a lot more to extrapolate out of that. I'm going to ask it to provide the top 10 cities for digital nomads, focusing on factors like internet speed, co-working spaces, and affordable housing options. So that's interesting. We're going to be actually talking about bandwidth. I think that's worth breaking down. Yep, and it says that it's got some internet speed, space here. It provides some co-working spaces. And I'm going to challenge this. I'm going to say, hey, can you tell me specifically the top 3 internet providers in all of these cities? And then can you tell me the top 3 co-working spaces that are within 5 miles of downtown? So it's got all of this broken. Hey, can you restate all the information that you just gave me? But I'm going to want the top 3 internet providers in all of these cities and some information about them. And then I'm going to want the top 3 co-working spaces in the downtown area of all of the cities that you mentioned. And then I want a bit of information on the average housing price for a 1-bed, 1-bath in all of these cities as well. So I'm going to ask you for a lot more detail. I'm interested to see how it turns out. Okay, so let's see. Internet providers, yep. Average housing price. Top 3 co-working spaces, yep. Cool. And so let's see. I'm going to say, specifically, I'm going to say, can you give me all of this information in a table, please? Thank you. I always like to be nice to the AI when I can. You know, because one day. All right, cool. So all of this information is in a table. Awesome. And it looks like it didn't sort it. So I'm going to ask it, can you sort this information from the cheapest average housing price for a 1-bed apartment to the most expensive? And we'll see if it restates the table and gives us the cheapest to the most expensive. Cool. And then it left out all the other information. I'm going to say, this is awesome. Can you provide me this table again with the same sort, but also include all of the other information that you left out? So I'm wondering if it'll remember all of that, because that's something that, yeah, okay, cool. So I brought that in. So Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, Lisbon, and it got a little bit jacked up here, I think. Actually, no, because these are whatever this is, and then these are dollars. So I think it's actually sorting in international, which is pretty cool. So, okay, awesome. So we know that information now. Now, let's see. I want to take this prompt right here. I think this one's going to be interesting. We'll reset the chat. I'm going to ask about rank the top 5 safest cities in the United States and discuss the reasons behind their low crime rates. So I'm interested to see what it says about this, like what the top 5 safest cities are. It's interesting. So, okay, so the top 3 are in Texas, Santa Clarita, California. Oh, so 5 of them are in Texas with the lowest crime rates. And so it gives the reasons here. And what I want to do is I want to say, can you give me the top 5 safest cities in the United States that have more than 200,000 people living in the city? Because those could be really, really, really small cities, and you know they could have an astronomically low breakdown there. Okay, cool. So we had all these still in Texas. I'm going to say, can you give me the top 5 safest cities in the United States with a population over 1 million? So I'm interested to see what the top 5 safest with a population over 1 million would be. Okay, so we got Honolulu, San Diego, Virginia Beach, Austin, Texas, and El Paso, Texas. And the populations are not, the populations don't match up to over 1 million, so its math is a little bit weak there. But it does have a, like, I think it's reasoning and saying, well, I can't give you 5 safe cities, or what it would consider safe, that are at that million number, but it went right below that and then tried to give stuff that was nearby, like 700,000, kind of like a roundup type scenario. That's cool. I'm going to ask it to do a task for me. Can you give me a table for all 5 of these cities that provides the crime data of murders, vehicle thefts, robbery, and drug crimes in each of those cities for 2021, 2022, and 2023. So I'm interested to see if it can do this research, this data research, basically, and if it can dig up some information and give a table. Wow, so it looks like it gave this information, but it's not in a table. It just sort of slammed it in there. It looked like it tried to make a table. So let's tell it, great, this information is good, but it is not formatted in a table. Can you please give me that information in a table? Okay. And it's not in a table. But let me see if we can have it do it again. I'm going to say, what happens when I say new response? Let's see. When I say new response, it should be pushing this out. So the information you gave me is not formatted in a table properly. Can you please provide the information again? And so it looks like it's formatting it to where it could almost be in a table, but it's not showing up in the HTML. Okay, yeah, so it's giving a code snippet. Hey, I wasn't interested in getting a code snippet. I would like all this information to be in a table, please. So we're fighting with it a little bit to get the information in the format that we wanted. And then it left out all of the other data. But okay, so I think this is one of the ones we could keep slamming it to try to get information out of it. But I think that is what it is. But yeah, I hope this was interesting. I think this kind of gives an idea of like where BARD is at right now in 2023. We're in April, at the end of April, and I think this is going to get better. Still experimental. Things like this, I think, will clean up. I think this is basically like Chat GPT 3, but hooked up to the internet. So I think that's my broad idea of what this is. So we'll see what the deal is. But if you hung out with me this long, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video. All right, so in this video, we're going to see how BARD reacts to a series of prompts about business and business plans. And the first one that I'm going to give it is to evaluate the feasibility of a bakery in Portland, Oregon. And we're going to see what it gives us. Basically, the idea is that it's going to give us something like market demand. And so one thing it did is we said, it's a vegan bakery. And so it says, well, hey, Portland, Oregon would be a good market for that. Because apparently a recent study found that the vegan food market in Portland is worth an estimated $100 million. And that's interesting right off the bat. It gives some more details here, but I'm going to say, can you cite this study? Tell me more details about this study and where to find it. So we're going to see what it does. It is sometimes hesitant to give you links to things on the internet, but here we go. We got it right here. Cool. Okay, so it says, hey, here's the study. Here's the takeaways of the study. And so pretty neat. Very cool. Now, what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to refresh the chat. I think that was really good. We're going to give it a different prompt. So we're going to say, hey, can you give us an outline of a business plan for a mobile app development company, including sections on the executive summary, market analysis, and financial projections? I'm not really sure. I think this is kind of a vague prompt, but I want to see if it'll give us a breakdown on what this should do. So it says, okay, here for your executive summary, you should provide all of this stuff, something called a USP. Unique selling proposition. Cool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, can you create a example of a comprehensive business plan for a vegan bakery in Portland, Oregon? Just give all of the details as fictional or made up. So I'm curious to see if it'll go through and it will take all this information and then generate based off of this. Okay, so it says executive summary, and then it gives this example here. So it gives like a fake mission statement, target market, competitive advantage, and let's see, products and services, cool. Market analysis, marketing plan, okay, and financial plan. Projected revenue of $1 million for its first year of operation. Wow, pretty high goals. Cool. All right, so let's do this. I'm gonna reset in the chat.
I'm going to take this next one. So this is a prompt on market research. I'm going to say, hey, I want you to analyze the current market trends for eco-friendly fashion products. So I'm interested just to see what this comes up with in general. So let's see. I think, I'm not sure what a CAGR is, something growth rate. And so let's see. It's breaking down natural materials, ethical production, transparency, affordability. I'm going to ask it, can you give me 5 examples of companies that are front runners in the eco-friendly fashion market, and then give me examples of some of the products that they are selling that are successful. I'm curious to see what it gives back on that. Okay, so it gives companies like Patagonia, Everlane. I've never heard of some of these other ones. Allbirds, they use eucalyptus tree fiber and merino wool. Interesting. Great, very cool. So some examples there. Now, there's another prompt here. I'm going to reset the chat here. I'm going to say, hey, give us a SWOT analysis, which I think stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for a new online fitness coaching business, identifying key strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so, let's see. So this is breaking down all of what would make a business like that strong. And then weaknesses could be this. I think this is some business school stuff. I'm not actually sure. I'm going to ask it. I'm going to say, where would you actually use a SWOT analysis? And I'm curious to see what it says, because this is something that I don't know. So it says you can use it for business planning, project planning, personal development. So it's just identifying things, and it's a strategic plan that helps businesses achieve their goals. It could also be used in the same way. I'm going to ask, is this taught in business school? I'm just curious if some of this is like an academic concept. Cool. All right. So let's see. So I'm going to have, let's reset the chat. Got another prompt here that's going to say, hey, develop financial projections for new e-commerce stores selling sustainable kitchen products. And so I'm interested to see what that looks like. I'm hopeful that it gives things back in a data format, because we are asking for a lot of like numerical data, revenue, costs, and net profit, and all that type of stuff. So of year 1, year 2, year 3. And there's just a bunch of breakdown here. See, it's not as good here as it could be in a table. So I'm going to say, can you give me this information in a data table so that I can see year over year, from year 1 to year 3, all of the information that you provided. So let's see if it gives that. All right, came right out. So year 1, 2, and 3 has kind of a generic revenue, cost of goods sold, gross profit, net profit. Cool. So that's pretty handy. So I think you could feed it more details, and it might be able to create some sort of personalized thing. So that's cool. Let me go ahead and reset the chat here. So let's go to the, this is another prompt on marketing strategy. So it says design a marketing strategy for a new subscription box service focused on organic snacks, including advertising channels, content creation, and influencer partnerships. So I'm interested to see, well, this one comes out. Okay, so it says, hey, here's a marketing strategy. This is advertising channels you can go and use with typical social media platforms, websites, blogs, email marketing, and public relations outreach. For content creation, it talks about blog posts, webinars, create videos, and then about partnership and how to do that. And so let's see, some pretty basic stuff in terms of like strategy and guidance. One thing I'm going to ask it, I'm going to throw it a curveball, and I'm going to say, what do you know about integrating chatbots and AI into this marketing strategy? So I'm interested to see what it says about that, because this is kind of a newer sort of topic, and it's giving me some sort of like, older advice. So it talks about chatbots and AI, and it says, hey, you could use these to generate leads or answer customer questions and provide support, and then use AI to analyze customer data. And then we could also use AI to create personalized marketing campaigns. So that's pretty cool. So definitely has a thought pattern on like some of the latest stuff. So I'm going to say specifically, how could I use large language models like ChatGPT and Bard to enhance my marketing strategy or integrate with my marketing strategy? See what it comes up with. Okay, cool. So it's saying we could use either of those to generate content or personalize it or create targeted ads and make predictions. That's pretty cool. And then it says it could help you set goals, gather data. So what it's saying here is that there's some additional tips for using LLMs. So it's saying that you're going to need to be very clear about what you want to do, which is important because like you're going to have to feed information to a large language model so that it knows exactly what you're talking about. Specifically, if it's about you, you're going to want to make that very, very clear. So awesome. It's pretty straightforward. So this next prompt is going to be a competitive analysis for a boutique hotel in Charleston, South Carolina. So this is interesting because it's going to have to do a local market analysis of just one city. So I do kind of want to see what it says. So it's going to say, here's a competitive analysis. Okay, so there's some other hotels nearby that start at $250 per night, number of rooms 50. Okay, and here's all the things that it offers. And here's some similar establishments, right, that are in Charleston. So it's giving you all those names. And then it's saying that there's a competitive advantage for this one hotel because of its unique location, right? And so with a hotel, yeah, locations do matter. And so let's see. And I think that this is actually... and it gave its sources right here from Google. So let's see. I think that this might be... Oh, so I think it took a hotel called the Luttrell. Let me actually look this up real quick. Yeah, so sure enough, this is a actual hotel in Charleston, South Carolina. So what's interesting is that this hotel specifically exists, and this just ran a competitive analysis on this specific hotel. And I find that interesting because it was one of the top rated ones on Google with a 4.9, 124 Google reviews. So it is doing really well for sure. And it pulled all the information about it and then compared it to all the other hotels in the region. So I think that is kind of interesting because it didn't just give you a generic, it actually gave you an example of like a specific business. So I find that pretty cool. All right, our next prompt is going to be identifying and describing key customer segments for a new virtual reality gaming platform, including demographic information and motivations for purchasing. So this is pretty cool because it's going to say, hey, can you explain this industry that doesn't have a lot of like a whole ton of information on it. And so let's see what it says. So it's breaking out customer segments for like early adopters, casual gamers, and what it's calling hardcore gamers. and it's breaking those into basically 3 demographics. And then it's breaking down the motivations for like social gaming, new and exciting gaming experiences, things that are outside of traditional gaming platforms, and then an immersive experience. So one thing it breaks down, which is true, is that VR gaming platforms are still relatively expensive, and this is a major barrier for entry for many potential customers. Hardware requirements and content availability, because there's not a lot of VR gaming content available. Interesting. All of that checks out for me. I think this is interesting. We could ask it to do this for, any number of other like industries or topics, and I think it would be interesting to see how it breaks all that down. So this is a cool kind of example of that. I think this is really helpful for just like forming examples and creating kind of like brainstorming content. This is pretty typical of all large language models of this caliber. All right, so let's see. Sales strategy. The next prompt deals with creating a sales strategy. This is going to be for a software as a service product targeting small and medium-sized businesses, including lead generation, pricing models, and closing techniques. So it's got this whole bit about lead generation and how to do all this. So you can do content marketing, inbound marketing, and outbound marketing. And it talks about the pricing models, which is subscription, pay per user, pay as you go. And that's charging for the amount of time. And then closing techniques, just some kind of basic sales stuff about like how to get customers to buy your product, which is interesting. And let's see. Yeah, some focuses in general if you're starting a business like this: for affordability, offer free trials, and provide excellent customer support. So very cool. And I'm going to even say that's a good response right there. All right, so the next prompt that we have is actually going to focus on a specific business scenario for electric scooters. And so it's going to say, hey, explore potential distribution channels for an electric scooter, focusing on both online or online and brick and mortar retail options. Let's see what it comes back with. Okay, cool. So it's saying that some of your potential distribution channels could be direct to consumer, e-commerce, social media. It breaks down brick and mortar retail. It talks about consumer electronics stores, bike shops, and scooter rental companies. And then it's talking about some additional things to consider, which I think that's really neat. It as like extra like food for thought, things like, hey, you're going to need to think about these items on top of just this straightforward answer. So pretty cool. Yeah, I think it's an interesting example of how Bard reacts to business and sort of like finance type prompts, and not so much finance, but more like business planning or business strategy prompts in general. So I think if you had a specific business, and you gave it that information and you told it, I have an electric scooter company called Zippity Doo, and we sold 3,000 units of our scooter that is priced at $4,500 per unit in the last month alone. Can you create a projection of our sales for the next 12 months, and then also give me a strategy for accomplishing distribution, along with some thoughts on how many employees I might need to hire in our warehouse for packaging and shipping all of these units. So I'm curious to see what it'll say. And this this completely made a name, Zippity Doo. Okay, cool. So it's saying like, hey, if it's at that price, here's how many units you're doing. Here's your revenue every month. And what it's saying is, what you might want to do is partner with a logistics company, offer free shipping. And let's see, there are thoughts on how many employees. Here's some thoughts on how many employees you might need to hire. So it actually kind of says, well, you're going to need to figure out the size of your warehouse and the volume of orders you're receiving. But I bet if I gave it some more information about like how long it takes to package each thing, then it would probably give that information. So like, let's say that I have this company and I could actually go over and I could figure out the metric on that. I could say, well, it takes 2 people 5 minutes to package and ship 10 scooter units. Can you tell me how many employees I would need to ship all these units and how many hours they would need to work each week? So if I got that small metric, I could pass it to Bard and we'll see if it can figure that out. Okay, cool. So I don't know if this math is right, but it looks like if I have 1.78 employees, it addresses that. It says, well, you're going to need to hire 2 employees because that's impossible. And these employees will need to work about 35 hours each week to accomplish shipping all these units. So with all that in mind, I could say, how much could I pay these employees if, like based off of how much revenue I'm bringing in, if each scooter costs $2,000 and the sale price is $4,500, and I already told you how many units I'm selling, if I wanted to be generous with the pay, how much do you think I could pay them? So I'm curious to see what it'll come back with that. I wonder if it'll come back with like a, oh wow, so it cannot generate financial advice. I know, but in theory, could you provide me with a pay range that I could use to theoretically pay these employees? I'm curious if it will intervene or not, or if it wants to stay out of that. So what it what it does is just gives a like broad range of like what people usually get paid, and then it says, you know, it has a lot of like kind of disclaimers about employee pay. So interesting how it reacted to that. It didn't break down and say I could pay them $100,000 per year, which is interesting because I think the margin in that business scenario would have been there. But interesting enough. But if you hung out with me this long, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.